Okay, no special announcements from me, so I'm going straight into this afternoon's speaker. Delighted to welcome David Busse, and I'm going to read his career profile to you. David started life as a mechanical engineer. David has experience over 30 years in process engineering for major food and dairy industries. He has been responsible for creating 3 UK subsidiaries of German process engineering manufacturers and a successful startup of his own spare parts and service supply business, principally to food sectors. His role at KLBD involves worldwide sales of kosher certification for ingredients and raw materials sectors. Now in his 10th year working at KLBD, David also speaks at universities and academic institutions to future generations of food scientists and quality managers, giving presentations analysing the growth in demand for kosher ingredients. Just before I ask David to take over and give us his presentation, we've got a very special guest today I also want to introduce, a member of the Busse family, but actually for Bushy Shaw members, you won't know her by that name. Her name is Michelle Lessman. Michelle Lessman is our assistant administrator, and she is the daughter of our presenter today. And I'm delighted, there she is, pictured Michelle. I just want to say Michelle is not taking any time off work. This is her day off. So welcome, Michelle, lovely to see you. And as I say, for Bushy Shaw members, you will all know Michelle well, I'm sure. So David, now over to you.
Thank you very much, Stuart, for that very nice introduction. As you said, my name is David Busse, and you stole my thunder there, Stuart, because I was going to introduce my beloved daughter, Michelle Lessman, as I'm sure all of your Bushy congregants there and probably everybody on the screen here all know the wonderful and efficient job she does there at your shore. Firstly, I'd like to thank Daphne for her invitation to me and to indeed to KLBD for allowing me to give this short presentation today about my work. And I appreciate that, and I hope you all find it interesting. So good afternoon, everybody. I take it everybody can hear me satisfactorily. I thought during this difficult time would be interesting to talk to you about my work at KLBD. The funny thing about this topic is that no matter what people's religious affiliation is, everybody seems very opinionated about kosher. I mean, Jackie Mason, the comedian, once commented that when people return from vacation, their immediate response is not about the place, the museums, the mountains or the beaches. No, it's about the kosher restaurants they found and how big the pieces of cake or steaks they ate. So in KLBD, I operate as technical sales consultant for new certifications worldwide for raw materials and ingredients. I emphasize these items as they form the major part, the backbone of KLBD revenue. This is contrary to most people's view of retail products, what they find in Kosher Kingdom and Waitrose, important though it is, and kosher restaurants, of course, but it actually is the ingredients and raw materials that is the real meat of what we do worldwide. So as Stuart mentioned, in my early years after qualifying as a young mechanical engineer, I've had a specialist career in technical sales. The last 30 of which have been the supply of all manner of stainless steel process equipment. Some of you may have seen Greg Wallace and In the Factory that he does from various food factories, and you can see some of the importance of stainless steel, as the most recent one I think was from the Yeo Valley Yogurt Company. And I used to supply big corporate sectors of the food industry, such as the likes of Unilever, Cadbury's, Mars, Britvic, and similar. But having sold my business about 10 years ago now, nothing absolutely nothing could have prepared me for my work at KLBD. One of my first experiences at the department, when I made an early phone call to a prospect who, when I announced I was calling from KLBD, they said, "Oh, I know what that means. That's the London Death Bin." I hope some people find it slightly amusing. Anyway, as the only clean-shaven man in a sea of bearded men, my position is perhaps unique. Initially, with the strange vocabulary one hears coupled with the announcement of Mincha every day, not at the moment, of course, we're working from home. It's a very unusual working environment, often hearing complex Hebrew phrases used by the rabbis. I'll give you just a few examples, and this is the sort of thing you hear in the background. Some of them you may know, some of them you not. For example, nat bar nat, which refers to secondary absorption. Nikur means the removal of forbidden fats. Dukka desakina is to do with pressure. Yesol des bo, temperature that one would retract one's hand from. Kovush refers to 24 hours. And my favorite, Evan Malubin. Now, when I first heard the phrase Evan Malubin, I thought they were referring to some sort of Welsh international footballer. But no, actually, Evan Malubin is a koshering stone in a metal frame that's typically used by very serious people, shall we say, for koshering for Pesach. So KLBD is the oldest kosher certifying authority, built importantly on great experts in both ingredient knowledge and the Jewish laws that affect them. Particularly so in some difficult areas such as dairy-based products, or those where non-kosher fish could be involved, or indeed grape extracts. Where fish are involved for the production of omega-3, you may have all heard of omega-3 rich oil for nutrients and which you can buy in specialist health food shops. We have to check that the crude oil has been produced from kosher fish. Not so easy with hundreds of species. Other areas of nutrients are grape extracts used. For example, the grape skin is used in coloring for food colors, and also the seed, grape seed, is used again. You can buy things like grape seed extract as a nutrient, as a health-giving item, full of polyphenols, which are good for the system. We have to ensure with grapes there's no connection with the fermentation process used in non-kosher wine areas. Grape is a very sensitive product in the Beth Din, in the KLBD, and we have to be sure that when we're dealing with any grape product, they're not part of the wine, the non-kosher wine process. More recently, we've been involved with other ingredients. Some of you may have heard of them, superfruits, such as baobab, which is a coconut lookalike product from Senegal, or acai or goji berries, all falling into the area of certifying on a global export basis. What is not often understood is why such items or other ingredients need kosher certification. It is because world exports demand it like any other accreditation, such as organic, vegetarian, or indeed halal. And this all because ingredient manufacturers never know where their products will ultimately end up. And of course, it could be within the kosher food chain. But most of these companies within their quality assurance departments, and that's the department that I principally deal with, quality assurance, they all fully understand kosher. and the aspects of visits by our rabbinic auditors, each of whom are experts with the taste and smell of the ingredients in addition to their understanding of the process. Indeed, part of my training involved me going out on several audit visits with some of the rabbis. An audit, when the rabbi goes out to any factory, but particularly as we're speaking about, say, ingredients and raw materials, a pre-discussion with the client just to find out that everything is okay, that nothing principally has changed, checks of all their documentation to making sure that other ingredients used within the total mix are still valid, a warehouse storage check, which at the moment, by the way, we're carrying out virtual audits. That means that everything's done from our office. The rabbi sits there and the camera is taken around the plant to look at the various warehouses in the food manufacturing facility, looking out for the kosher logos on the products, on the drums in which they're held, and a process check to make sure that everything is as it was on the previous audit visit, because often they are changing their process. So typical ingredient product groups include colors, flavors, natural extracts, spices, essential oils, synthetically, chemically or originated products such as acetic or tartaric acids, and nutrients in addition to gluten-free. Even packaging materials, you might be surprised to hear, we certify a number of packaging materials where they're coming in direct contact with foodstuffs, and where that customer is concerned about this and where the ultimate product is to be kosher, often the material to be, should we say, against the foodstuff concerned, that is also kosher certified. So products are roughly classified as A1, A2, or A3. And for the purpose of this, I'll just give you a very simple explanation of what that means. A1 is for straightforward components such as spices, flour, malt, natural extracts, or superfruits I mentioned before. A2 is where varying process operations are involved, such as blending or steam cleaning. And A3 is where complex finished products, as is the case with the famous Mars bar, which probably most of you know, is a KLBD certified product, as are all the Mars products in the UK, all the Twix and Snickers and Galaxy. If you look in your supermarket, you'll see they've all got the KLBD logo. The reason that A3 is the most complex is because there are many ingredients involved in the production, as you can imagine, of a Mars bar. If you just think about it, you look at the back, you'll see a whole list of different products. And also the process steps in the production of Mars bars are also quite complex. So that shows you the listing of products as we generally refer to them. And a big part of our work involves finding new prospects at international finished foods and ingredient exhibitions. And as you can see behind me here, this was a photograph. I just moved to one side. Which side? This side. And you can see my my beautiful wife, who helped out at such international exhibitions. And this was Food Ingredients Europe, held in Paris in 2015. And just gives you an idea of the sort of stand that we had. And of course, customers come around and visit you, you hope, and sign new contracts and the rest of it. But the exhibitions are extremely important. I don't now make these exhibitions. I did quite a lot of world travel, say up till 3 years ago. These involved going to America every year, the IFT exhibition held in Chicago, typically TIFEX, an exhibition held in Bangkok. And also I had the opportunity of presenting and exhibiting at the World Spice Congress some years ago in Cochin in South India. So they are fantastic methods for us to present ourselves internationally on the global stage, and also to say hello to existing clients who are often exhibiting at these exhibitions. Additionally, my work has included giving PowerPoint presentations about kosher and what it means at existing open days and to various academic associations, as Stuart mentioned, universities and food research establishments. With millions of Jews in their backyard, the whole of the kashrus industry is largely driven by the United States agencies such as authorities that you may have seen on packaging here, and also if you visited America, such as OU, COFK, Star K, Circle K, and many others. But KLBD is, you know, we're in a very important geographically strategic position in Europe and rank as perhaps the 5th or 6th largest agency in the world. So we are, yeah, I say that with some pride, we are a truly global kosher certifying authority. When we do find a new company ready to consider kosher, initially they must make an application to us, listing their ingredients, their location, and process flowcharts. The location is relevant because when we come to make a quotation to a customer, we have to be sure that you know where we are traveling, involves costs, accommodation, and the rest of it. So that's one aspect of what we do in terms of our quotation that perhaps it should be appreciated. And also, when they make an application, we need to see their what we call a process flow chart. Process flow chart is, as you can imagine, a lot of lines. It shows pumps and mixers and everything else that's going to happen to the ingredients. So we have an overview about exactly what it is they're going to be doing and what the materials are they're going to be using. Our certificate is normally issued as part of an annual audit. So this means a visit is normally required at least normally once a year to renew kosher for the next year. Sometimes if the product is very straightforward or the location is so remote, we'll allow a visit every 2 years. Excuse me. Locations which might seem unusual, such as Pakistan, India, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Sudan, are visited, but our inspectors are used to these remote locations. Their attitude to travel is different to yours and mine. It's strictly functional and often with very antisocial working hours, rarely having access to kosher restaurants and having to take their own foods as the level of their kashrut, as you can imagine, is of the highest standard. And they may only take pot noodles or crackers and then buy fruit locally. Concerning the process, cleaning where parev, following dairy a product in a situation like that, often involves a special koshering or kashering process to be carried out to make sure there's no contamination between the dairy and the parev. This is especially relevant for people who are lactose intolerant, and for them parev is very important, no milk. And this is normally no problem because most companies have what they call cleaning in place. They have a process run by computers where the pumps will put through the necessary solutions to make sure all of that cleaning process prior to parev is carried out very thoroughly. Steam is often used in operations, and if it's on a ring main in a factory, we have to be sure that the ring main does not pass through any areas which are involving potential non-kosher products within that circuit. It shows you the extent to which we go, that if steam is involved, and it often is, that we have to be sure where the steam is being raised, from which boiler, which part of the factory, and that ensures there's no potential contamination with something that could be considered as being non-kosher. So in KLBD, we have ingredient specialists and chemists to check the validity and background of any materials or process aids, such as stabilizing agents or indeed cleaning solutions. Our administration do a tremendous amount of liaising between the customers and the inspectors to arrange the initial inspection date, to book travel and accommodation, to ensure the certificate is both posted and also sent in electronic format. In fact, most of our certificates now are only going out in electronic format because of the difficulties due to the COVID crisis. Our administrator, our certification administration manager, Gitta Rottenberg in the office, she organizes the travel and the accommodation to ensure that everything is just organized just so for the auditors, as their most important work is to be there, to get there and to carry out the work punctually and effectively. And she also, by the way, makes sure that the invoices are sent out, because as you can imagine, if somebody, for example, in the Indian subcontinent says, yes, I need kosher, then we have to be sure, yes, that payment is made prior to our auditor going there. And it's all done in a very solid and professional manner. We pride ourselves in KLBD as being very professional in all our work, particularly so in our sales and marketing work, which provides significant revenue for the United Synagogue. All of this under the leadership of our Executive Director, Rabbi Jeremy Conway. In addition to catering and restaurant licensing, of course, they've had a punishing time of it recently. The Shomrim schedules are organized by our office, as are those for Jewish care, just as an example, care homes. And KLBD also has an information department producing any alerts and guides, and we have new apps on stream at the moment so that the public can be going straight to their phones to find out information about any of the foods they wish to buy in supermarkets. So we're getting calls. Often people call, and we have 2 or 3 people that are there to answer calls, often from people in supermarkets asking, is this okay? Is this, or where can I get this? And the rest of it. Our commercial manager is Russell Brown. He's the man that I work with. He's a great expert in all facets and financial issues linked with KLBD, and I pay due acknowledgement and appreciation of his guidance to me over the years. Also, who I understand has given a presentation to Busse Sage as what she calls the KLBD Roadshow, is my colleague Sharon Feldman-Bazan, and she looks after the retail and finished product sectors. And I know that particular meeting was taken with great interest. Look, this is just an overview of my work. I hope it's been of interest. And if there are questions, I shall be delighted to give my best shot to answer them. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David. David, your face is now familiar to me. I lived in Kenton many years ago, I think for up till 1991. I seem to remember seeing you about Kenton Shore. Were you on the board of management there?
Well, I was for some years, yeah, and ran some couple of committees there successfully over a few years. Indeed, I was in Kenton from a boy in the 50s right through until 5 years ago when we moved to Stanmore. And actually, just to wave Kenton's flag a little bit, a lot of Kenton people, unfortunately, have left. It's a smaller community now, but a lot of people cut their teeth in Kenton and learnt all their Yiddishkeit and a lot of their capabilities and all the rest of it there in Kenton. So Kenton does have a special face. What did I say? You can take the boy out of Kenton, but you can't take Kenton out of the boy.
And you haven't changed a bit.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd like to say the same about you as well, Stuart. But
I think I've lost a bit of hair, and what I have got a bit grey since then, but we won't talk about that. So, because nobody else is listening, I'm sure. Right.
Well, as we're discussing people from Kenton, having seen you, David, I now realise that you and Wendy and I grew up as little girls all the way through at Shacklewell Lane Shul, and I can see Wendy nodding her head on the thing. So I do send you both my best wishes.
Yeah, very much. Thank you.
Lawrence, I'm on Zoom call.
There is one question I'd like to ask, actually, if I may, and that is, when people are refused, what then happens? Do you give them a list to be able to then accept them, or are they just thrown on the heap?
Would you interpret the word refuse? What do you actually mean by that?
They don't reach your standards of actually, you know, adding them as kosher sufficiently.
You know, the story of it is that most of our ingredient and raw material customers, it may not sound like the glamorous side of KLBD. Most people, as I said, want to hear about the bars of chocolate and things you can buy in the supermarket. But generally speaking, the ingredients side, we do our vetting when we get their application in. So we know what their ingredients are. We will ask them about those ingredients, what the sourcing of those ingredients was, and indeed, if some of the ingredients have their own kosher certifications around them. So, yeah, occasionally we do have some problems, but generally speaking, that word that you use, refuse, it's not normally one of the things that we would refuse anybody. Normally, customers know that their ingredients are neutral, they're parev, or if they're milk-based, then of course, then if they're dried materials, it's fine. Liquid milk requires Chalav Yisrael, which is much more complex. I hope that answers the questions, Stephanie. Anyway,
okay. Lawrence Brass, you wanted to come in?
A question. Thank you for a very interesting talk. Could you give me the definition of glut kosher, and could you explain the rationale behind it?
No. Look, glut kosher is an item of discussion that normally only comes up, as we all know, with regard to meat. Our department has nothing to do with meat. We don't certify any meat extracts. We don't certify any meat products. And glut is with meat. Yeah, I believe is a terminology that's used with regard to the lungs of an animal. And if a particular butcher or restaurant for that matter is concerned about having glut kosher meat, then of course the meat that comes in must be duly certified as gluts, as having come from an animal with lungs with no impurities. And that's as far as I can tell you, Lawrence, because otherwise if you wanted a greater, much more detailed description of glut, probably best to ask your rabbi.
So in effect, you're saying there are two different levels of kosher.
The polite reply to that is that you must interpret your kosher requirements as you see appropriate to your particular requirements, should we say, as a Jew. It might be, we all know the discussion about whether somebody would eat. We've all heard, let's be honest, that certain rabbinical figures are concerned they only eat gluts, you know, therefore perhaps a meal by Hermolus, I don't know if they are glut, might not be suitable. They may say, oh no, I'll organize the meal myself. So these things are an interpretation. Of course, there are different levels of...
He won't eat anything under KLBD.
Sorry, can you not talk whilst David's talking, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. Go on, David.
That's fine, it's fine. Look, the interpretation of kosher, this is what I started out my remarks by saying, and it is incredible that Jews have so much to say about kosher, you know, it's unbelievable. no matter what, whether there's mountains falling down, eruptions, earthquakes, whatever's happening, political agendas like we're seeing in America. No, kosher. Where do I get my kosher stuff from? Do you know that Waitrose is now selling, I don't know, say, Rude Health products, for example? And that's something else to say, whilst you mentioned that Rude Health and other product manufacturers in gluten-free and also vegan is raising in prominence as well. So we have to follow the trends ourselves. So those companies that want to sell their products as kosher certified accordingly. But with regard to the levels of kosher, look, it might be said that we in Busse and Stanmore and Kenton, we have our own levels of kosher observance. They might be one. And then, of course, there's always people that have a higher level of observance and a higher level of particular needs in respect of whatever it is they do, however they prepare their food and whatever they do. So these things are a personal interpretation. If you were to look at the books that describe kosher, then obviously, you know, there are strict ground rules around which we should follow. That goes from everything that we do, all the ingredients that we use at home and meals that we have. And it's a question of people's personal interpretation rather than say there are 2 levels of kosher. If you say there's 2 levels of kosher, it's too stark a description of it. So I hope you appreciate those words of mine.
Thank you, David. Lawrence, can you take your hand down now, please? Thank you. Right, who else has got a question? Yes, identify yourself.
Yes, Carol. Carol.
Okay, Carol.
Hi. I looked at sometime last year the KLBD book that came to the houses, and I noticed that the ice cream I was buying, which is Ben & Jerry's vegan ice cream with a kosher sign on it, Cough K.
Yeah.
And I looked in the book and it says it's classified as dairy.
Yeah.
But it's vegan. Now I phoned the Beth Din twice to ask about this. And I also spoke to my rabbi. And the answer I've got is so confusing.
Yeah.
I really can't understand where I was explained that it has been made on machinery that could possibly have had milk in it. Is that right?
I don't know. Did you say Ben & Jerry's?
Yes. Ben & Jerry's vegan ice cream has got Cough K, Parav. Oh, excuse me, it says Parav. Yes, I forgot that. It says Parav. And then on the list, it's got its dairy. And I've been told by 3 different people that you can eat it after your meat within an hour or 3 hours, whichever you keep. But you can't eat it with your meat, as if you would want to eat ice cream with your meat on the same plate. You can wash it up with your fleishik china, and I find the whole thing really confusing. Can you explain that?
No.
I didn't think.
The only thing I can explain to you is that we have 2 or 3 ladies within KLBD whose work it is to take a call like yours. Did you say it's Carol, was it?
Yeah.
Carol, to take a call like yours and make a call on that. Personally, it sounds to me as though it may be a printing error in our book. It does occur. And maybe if they say it's dairy, it's not, it's Parav, which is completely wrong, because you should not confuse dairy and Parav, of course, not least of which because maybe somebody's lactose intolerant.
So how does Carol get that clarified?
It's not a printing error. It is a fact that it is Parav, but they have to put that on to the whole explanation was so difficult to understand.
Carol, perhaps it's not a place here for a detailed discussion. I can't make an authoritative comment on that. I do suggest that inside the book that you've got, there is an email address at the back of it. Send them an email and say you've spoken to me. That should make some big impact on somebody. They'll probably,
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Carol. Right, somebody else.
Do you know
A question, is it, can you explain, I believe it was Marmite,
Who is that speaking?
Martin Moss.
Okay, Martin, go on.
I have two questions. First of all, Marmite was certified kosher, produced in one country but not another. Does that mean the factory in one country wasn't up to scratch? It certainly happened with Marmite. I believe it was South Africa. Marmite was kosher, and
Marmite's vegan.
And the other question I have is about organisations like Nightingale and Jewish Care. You may not be able to answer it because I don't think it's your department, but I was very involved and still am with Nightingale. Everything we have is kosher, and we have our own authorities there looking at everything coming in. But I don't believe Jewish Care or Nightingale, well, definitely not Nightingale, actually have a shomer in each place.
Oh, they will do.
Would Jewish Care,
unless the meals come in ready prepared, but generally speaking, if they've got a kitchen there preparing meals, they will have a shomer who is employed by, well, maybe not only by KLBD, it might be by Federation, it might be by the Sephardi Authority. Don't forget, although KLBD is the principal kosher certifying authority in the United Kingdom and indeed in Europe, we do have our neighbours, the Manchester Beth Din, we have the Federation, and also we have the Sephardi authorities who would also have a say about this. Concerning kosher for Marmite, do you know what? Of all the queries, the love it or hate it product, it's incredible the number of questions that come up about that dreaded black product. The story is and was that a few years ago, it was found that the Unilever plants in Burton-on-Trent that produces Marmite, product I remember from as a boy and all the rest of it on toast and, you know, very tasty, was being produced on a plant that was also being used for a non-kosher product. I think something like Bovril or something like that. So we immediately put up the barriers and said, look, we can't accept the product to be certified kosher if it's being produced on that line. And there was so much of a furor about it. Of course, some very clever Jewish congregants of shuls say, well, you know, I know somebody in South Africa, I've got a consignment coming in of pots from South Africa because the product produced in South Africa, we know is kosher, it's certified by the South African Beth Din, and. So in the end, this became so much of an issue. It was important that we then negotiated with Unilever to put in what we call a small production line exclusively for the kosher variety. And that's why the only product that you will see of a kosher variety are those small, I think there's something like 70-gram pots, which last you for about 10 slices of toast or something, and then you have to buy another one. But I've heard on the grapevine in the background that there are some moves to bring Marmite back into its full kosher glory so that we can have the proper pots of a decent size, but that's ongoing. And that really is all I have to say about Marmite. So I hope that gives you an overview anyway. It was an equipment issue, not an ingredient issue.
Right.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go on, Howard.
What special rules and care do you do about having Pesachdik stuff as opposed to ordinary kosher, run-of-the-mill stuff?
Excellent question, because in my work for ingredients and raw materials, yes, the question comes up. We need to make a kosher batch for Pesach, for Passover. Most of the quality assurance departments in the big companies that I deal with, they all know about kosher for Passover. So it's like this. Essentially, where we are certifying an ingredient somewhere in the world, our auditor will go in once and he will say, everything's in order, your ingredients are fine, your certificates are fine, your processing fine, and we leave them alone for a year. And yes, there does have to be a degree of trust between us and our client that they won't do anything naughty, shall we say, in the meantime. However, when it comes to Passover production, where an ingredient has to be kosher certified for Passover, the difference is the rabbi will stay there from the start. So there is a production batch for Passover, which starts and which he has to be present day or night during all of the mixing, blending, and whatever else it is, processing of a Passover production batch. That's the difference. The stringencies are much higher. And indeed, if there's any ingredients involved in our own ingredients, blending them or whatever, we have to be sure that that particular product has a kosher for Passover certificate. It might come from another authority. It might come from KOFK, STAR-K, OU, Manchester Beth Din, whoever. So that is the difference. The stringencies are much higher. It is a more expensive process for the client. And in my line of work, it's not so prevalent. I very, very rarely, only once or twice have I been involved in ingredients or raw materials that are involved on Passover production. Yeah.
Thank you.
Shlomo, is that all right, Howard?
Yes, thank you.
Shlomo, do you want to come in?
Thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon, Mr. Busse. Thank you for a fascinating talk and discussion. I'd like to come back to your point that you mentioned earlier on about Mars products. Now, as far as I understand it, they contain milk, correct?
Dried milk product and whey proteins, yes.
Right.
But they have a different status as dried. I think I know where you're going with this, because the dried products, milk powders and whey protein have a different status to the milk used, for example, for those who are very strict, who want to use Chalav Yisrael in their milk, in their yogurt, and in their cheese. I suggest most United Synagogue members are fairly lenient with their habit towards Chalav Yisrael for milk and for yogurt, but for cheese, I suggest a lot of us are particular about selecting only kosher cheese, which is Chalav Yisrael. Is that where you were going with that, Shlomo?
Essentially, yes, but it comes back to the point, in a way, made by His Honour Judge Brass a little while earlier, that it creates, if you like, a second tier of what is kosher.
No. No,
pardon?
Not regarding dry product, which is involved in the production of confectionery. It's considered perfectly acceptable. In fact, we will certify the big dairies like Kerry, the big dairies around the UK. We will certify them as they dry the product on their spray dryers. We will evaporate big bags. You can know these big bags of milk powder. They are certified by KLBD, and they're not Chalav Yisrael because there are different laws around dried product as there are to the products I've suggested, such as yogurt and such as milk.
So the Mars bar that somebody might buy in the shop is, if you like, not subject to the Chalav Yisrael rule.
No, it's not subject to the rules.
I'm very grateful. Thank you for clarifying.
You're very welcome.
Food for thought.
Okay. You take your hand down, Shlomo, please.
I will.
Thank you. Any more questions for David? Yes. Who's that? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm muted. There.
You're unmuted.
There.
Okay.
You.
Okay, go on.
Right, I wonder if you can help me. I don't know if it's your department, why you can't get the Talma soups anymore.
Now there's a question. Nobody's asked me about acetic or tartaric acid. Nobody's asked me about baobab and fancy ingredients and raw materials. That's my specialist expertise. No, everybody wants to know about about the things that we buy in the stores, Telma cubes, or Telma mixes rather, and I have no real expertise to say why that is. Who was Telma originally certified by? Was it by an Israeli authority?
I don't
Was it
know.
manufactured in Israel? Does anybody know? I really don't know. Nobody knows.
I'll let you know in a minute.
Good. That's going to make us a plate of soup at the same time. Lovely.
Gosh, if you don't know, David, who does?
Well, look, no, because that my colleague Sharon Feldman-Vazan, who is the lady who deals with retail products, you know, she would know, or indeed it's a question for our team. As I said, we have a team of people led by Rosalind Cotin. She's our lady who produces the Kashrus Guide in the book form. And we have other people there who are responsible for organizing our app. Is it kosher is one of them. And there are lots of mediums by which people can get in touch with the department and ask such questions, such as, sorry, I missed her name, the lady who just asked the question.
Marlene.
It's actually from Israel.
Yeah, I thought so, yes, from Israel. So, you know, with regard to the items that do come from Israel, yeah, that is what it is, and we have to accept it. And in the same way as KLBD logo is accepted in Israel and it's accepted worldwide. That is something which, as of our reputation, goes before us, because, yeah, I have to be frank, not all certifications are accepted in all countries. You need what's called, to use a football analogy, you need a Premier League certification, which I'm proud to say KLBD is. And there are some very small certifications worldwide where if you want to import into America, for example, the distributors would look at who has actually carried out the certification, say, I'm sorry, we can't accept that. We need a KLBD stamp on the product, or COFK or OU or whatever. As regards your Telma question, I really don't know if it's certified by Israel, because it's, hey, buy it and enjoy it. And make
Can't get it anywhere.
Can't get it.
No.
Hello, David and Wendy. It's Laurel and William. How are you?
Hello, good afternoon. Nice to see you.
We go back a long way.
Interesting talk, David. Very nice.
I know now I'm going to have a very articulate question posed to me of the highest and most erudite character.
But there's a build up for you. Go on then.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you had a question.
You did have a
Oh,
question.
no, we just want to say hello to our very old friend.
Oh, okay. I don't know if we allow that.
William, grew up with David.
You're going to ask me a question about tartaric acid, but quite obviously.
Too complicated.
Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you. And lovely to see everybody at Busse. And
Can't wait to play.
Pardon? Yeah, I know all about the tennis. Yeah. Well, Lauren, by the way, is a superb international tennis player of some repute. You know, beware when her forehand comes towards you, and also beware if you call the ball out wrongly as well. Isn't that right?
You have it. Yes, go on. Say who you are, please.
You unmute yourself.
I'm Eric Diamond, and my wife Anne is sitting next to me. We have in our hand,
yes,
some Telma cubes.
Ah, lovely.
And it says it's made by Unilever under license from Hyper, the Hyper board in Israel.
Well, that is because Unilever is a massive, as you know, multinational company, and quite obviously they have a manufacturing plant out there, or it's made under license here in the UK. By the sound of it, that Telma product is made in Israel.
Yes.
Yeah. Does it actually say manufactured in Israel or manufactured on behalf of? Because it may be that they license a plant over here. I don't know. And can you read the certifying authority? Probably very difficult, probably all in Hebrew, probably quite difficult.
Not too bad. Under the supervision of the chief rabbi in Haifa,
Yeah.
importer and distributor, and that's what it says.
Yeah, that's a product made in Israel that's imported by somebody here in the UK, and that's why it ends up very nice. Yes.
You see it on the screen, is it coming through?
Yes, yes. Most importantly, I can see the Unilever logo on the top left-hand side there. Very good. Thank you very much for showing me that. Chief Rabbinate of Haifa. Very good. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
Can I ask a subsequent? Can I ask a subsequent question?
Go on then, we'll let you.
Prime Minister's question time.
With the potential
question, I love it. Yeah, go on.
With the potential trade deal with America, are we expecting to see a flood of kosher food that are only available in America, or maybe in Israel, coming into the UK over the next few years?
What an interesting question. Yeah.
In the old days, some of the Empire chicken and things like that were very good. We get them on the cruises, but we can't get them in England.
Very good. Look, the question is that most of America's products, a lot of them are imported in. They come from the UK, they come from Europe. That is in the UK. So far as products coming in here to the UK, it's probably more limited. And I suggest that the only products that we see in any volume are the products, the very famous products that everybody loves compared to Smith's Crisps. That's the famous Lieber brand, for example. You know, so you've got all these different products that the Americans certify and they produce over there as kosher. Can we expect any greater degree of kosher importation from the United States? I would probably doubt it. I would probably doubt it. But if you go to stores like Kosher Kingdom, you will find an array of American-produced products.
Well, at the moment, most of us are shielded and we can't go shopping. So it's a bit of a problem.
That's right.
But when we can, I mean, we go to Mendy's in Edgware quite often.
Yes.
And they have a nice variety.
Yes,
but
yes.
If we go back 15, 20 years ago, we had a lot of Empire brand foods, which I don't see anywhere.
There's no Empire anymore.
I think Empire has, should we say, left the scene. Mind you, I do notice that some of the confectionery products, the candy products in those packs there, those jelly, I know, things that the kids like, are made by Pasquez. I don't know if they're American produced, for example. But, you know, I mean, frankly, I think we've got a good supply here in the UK of everything we need. From a kosher perspective, I think we can find everything in most of the major supermarkets, of course, depending on where they are in the country. And of course, we've got great stores like Mendy's, like Hadar, like Kelman's. I don't like all the stores, and you've got Flax's in Busse as well.
It is amazing, David, when I look at particularly Pesach. In my younger days, the limited range of products that were available for Pesach, and you now come to Pesach and you walk around places like Kosher Kingdom and others, you know, you are a sport for choice these days. Quite incredible how the market's expanded over the years, and stuff that is available you would never have thought many years ago. Incredible.
I know. The gentleman that asked earlier about the, should we call it the different levels of kashrut, you know, and then we come to Pesach, and of course we have the famous subject of kitniot, don't we? That also is a subject matter all of its own, which I think is mainly relevant to the Sephardi community, who allow the use of, is it haricots and similar products as kitniot, whereas we, shall we say, in the United Synagogue family, generally speaking, it's pasnish. We don't involve ourselves with kitniot.
Okay, any more questions for David before we let him go?
That's what KLBD want to do. They want to let me go. I'd like to say thank you very much to everybody who's assisted with this afternoon, particularly Daphne for setting matters up, to Stuart, and also to you as well for your assistance with the technicalities and setting up. And I hope there was something interesting in all this concerning the work that I carry out. At the moment, I'm very much a part-time worker, that I've tried to retire from KLBD 4 times. I had my leaving party in 2016 at Isola Bella, since closed, unfortunately. They made a nice presentation to me. And then my boss said to me, David, could you not work 2 days a week? I said, well, yeah, maybe I'll work 1 day a week. And that's how it's been for the last few years. And since I've become a small expert in kosher certification sales worldwide, they keep me on for what I can do for them.
You know,
Well,
some people are just too valuable to let go, aren't they, David? David, thank you so much for that. It has been extremely interesting. And I mentioned at the beginning that Michelle was on a day off, but I've just received a WhatsApp from her just to show that she's still working while she's at home. Thank you, Michelle.
Daphne, just let me please just say thank you. I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much, David. It was very interesting. I know you had 105 log-ons, which means that's a lot of people who enjoyed your talk, and thank you very, very much. It was very interesting.
Welcome. Is that a world and Olympic record, is it?
I'm afraid not. Nearly, though. No, it's
getting
probably
there.
Second or third.
So, David, are you still
much for listening? Bush and Sage, thank you very much for listening to me. I wish you all good health and good luck with your vaccinations, with your looking after yourself. Let's hope we get out of this nightmare and back to normal.
Indeed. Okay, just for me to finish off, just to remind you, on Thursday, same time, same place, we have current affairs. I believe that's Ian Daniels this week. And on next Tuesday, we're delighted we'll be welcoming back Jonathan Bergwerk, who's talking about Irving Berlin, the greatest American songwriter. So much more to look forward to in the future, PG. If you want to stay on and chat, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, good afternoon. Keep well, keep safe.
Thank you.